In this recording, we're going to look at Task 4 from the PDSY Practice Assessment 1. Louise Harding, the Finance Director, is preparing a presentation for the Board of Directors. She has asked you to complete a comparative scorecard of key financial ratios which she will use as part of her presentation. Relevant data has been extracted for the last 2 years' accounts, and these extracts do not include the results of Merville Limited. So as you can see below here, we've got a snippet from the P&L account just showing the revenue, the cost of sales and the profit for operations. And then we've got the financial statement showing all the assets, the equity and the liability. So moving down, what we need to do is we need to complete the scorecard by calculating the missing ratios. And that's the ones which are not greyed out. So we've got the gross profit margin, the return on capital employed, the current ratio, the asset test and quick ratio, and the working capital cycle in days for the year ending the 31st of December 2000X. The first one is the gross profit margin. And this is a financial ratio that reveals the percentage of revenue remaining after subtracting the direct costs associated with producing and selling goods or services, also known as the cost of goods sold. So the formula for the gross profit margin is sales revenue minus cost of sales divided by the sales revenue multiplied by 100. So we're going to be looking at the 20,900 minus the 15,144, and then we're going to divide that again by the sales revenue of 20,900. Once we multiply it 1 decimal place, this becomes 27.5%. It's also worth noting the difference of the percentage from one year to the next. So this has shown the gross profit has decreased by 0.9%. The next one is return on capital employed, and the formula for this is profit from operations divided by the equity and the non-current liabilities added together, then multiplying by 100%. So we're going to use 3 figures here, which is the profit from operations, the equity value, and the non-current liability value. So that's 470 divided by 6,900, and then multiply that at 100 gives us 6.8% to 1 decimal place. So we can see here there has been a decline of 10.7%. The return on capital employed is a profitability ratio that shows how effectively a company is using its capital, both debt and equity, to generate profit. And due to the decline of 10.7%, this signals that the company is generating less profit for every pound of capital it has invested in the business. And it can have several negative implications. Next up is the current ratio, and this is a liquidity ratio that measures a company's ability to pay off its short-term liability, which are obligations due within 1 year, with its current assets. Therefore, to calculate this, we're going to take the current assets and simply divide them by the current liabilities. So we have 3 current assets here, which come to the value of 6,946, And then the current liabilities, again, we've got 3 here, which come to the value of 4,230. So popping them into the formula, this gives us a 1.6 to 1. A common benchmark for a healthy current ratio is between 1.5 and 2. So having a 1.6 to 1, this indicates that the company has more current assets than current liabilities and should be able to meet its short-term obligation. The next one is the quick ratio or the acid test. And this is another liquidity ratio that provides a more stringent measure of the company's ability to meet its short-term obligations with its most liquid assets, excluding inventory. And the formula for this is current assets minus the inventory over current liabilities. So this time, when we're up at the top, we're going to exclude the 3908, which is the inventory value, which gives us a value of 3038. And we're going to simply use that to divide over the current liabilities. And that's going to give us an answer of 0.7 to 1. And as this is below 1, this typically indicates that the company may face challenges in meeting its immediate financial obligations without selling inventory or securing additional finance. So we can see that both of them have declined from one year to the next. This is by 0.2 to 1, and this is 0.1 to 1. The final one that we're going to look at then is the working capital cycle in days. And what the working capital cycle shows, it's the average number of days it takes for a business to convert its investments in inventory and accounts receivables into cash, minus the delay in paying its accounts payable. Essentially, it's measuring how long a company's money is tied up in its operating cycle. And the formula for this is the inventory days plus receivable days minus the payable days. And sometimes learners do get confused with the formula for this one. So if we just think about the assets and the liabilities, we're going to add all the assets together, which is the inventory and the receivables, and we'll deduct the liabilities, which is the payables. Okay, so here we've got the 94 plus the 53, then we're going to take off 90, and that's going to leave us with 57 days. So this is decreased by 3 days. And when the working capital cycle in days reduce, this is a good thing as it generally signifies an improvement in the company's operational efficiencies and cash flow management. And the final part of this question is to select the correct observations about each aspect of the business performance. So starting off with profitability, we need to decide whether it's one of the three. So the first one being this has been a steady year, if unspectacular progress. Although profitability has dipped, the return of capital employed has been kept under control. The profitability ratios give cause of concern. The small increase in sales revenue has not improved the gross profit margin, and operational expenses have increased, reducing operating profit and return on capital employed. And then the last one, some profitability ratios has improved and some have deteriorated. So further investigation is required to understand whether profitability is improving. So the two profitability ratios that we've been dealing with here is the gross profit margin and the return on capital employed. And from above, we can see that they've actually deteriorated, both of them, through the year. So the profitability ratios then should give us some concern. Okay, so as it says, the solution indicates that the gross profit and return have declined. The operating expenses have increased. So if we just have a look at the top here just to confirm that. Yep, we can see there the cost of sales leading from profit. There's a big difference between them both, so that indicates that there's been some high operating expenses. So yes, the answer to that one would be that we're going to be a little bit concerned about those profitability margins. The next one is to do with the gearing ratio. Although we didn't previously calculate this, if we just go back to the table, we can see from the gearing ratio, this has actually increased by 3.5%. So as it's increased, the gearing ratio is going to show that the company has become more riskier. It also means that the company is financed by more debts. And then lastly, we're looking at the liquidity ratio. So this is looking at the two that we looked at from current ratio and asset, and we can see that both of them have decreased. So both of them have deteriorated. Okay. And it obviously with that one deteriorating, the current ratio and acid test ratios have decreased, showing a decline in the company's ability to meet its short-term obligation. Okay. And then we've got then two more to look at, which is the working capital and the overall performance. So as we already established, the working capital did actually improve. Okay, and it was mainly due to the payables. Okay, so if we just have a quick look, we can see that there's been an increase in the payable days, which means that we're holding out a lot longer to pay our suppliers than, we are reducing the money that we're receiving from our customers. Okay, so because of this one, the answer to the working capital cycle is that there is a welcome improvement. And then the final part then is to do with the overall performance. So if we just have a think about the overall performance, the options here is that the profitability has declined, mainly due to competitive pressures. However, the gearing and liquidity measures show an improving financial position. 2002 has been a bad year. Profitability has declined and finances are becoming under pressure. And then steadily progress has been made. Well, we know steady progress hasn't been made. We know that the gearing ratio hasn't improved. So that automatically eliminates these two questions. So generally, overall, 2000X2 has been a bad year. The profitability has declined and finances are coming under pressure. So the combination of declining profitability and the deteriorating gearing and liquidity points to a bad year with increased finance pressure.